Hi guys, today I'm going to be doing a tutorial on the original Prusa i3 1.7mm kit. And at first I thought, well, why should I do this? This is going to be kind of boring, going to be kind of lengthy, and I already built my kit, so why should I do this again? Well, just because I want to. I'm going to just kind of run through the items that I had questions in. This kit is very good and it's very precise. It has very good diagrams, but like in anything, there's always a few questions that somebody might not know how to do and it might not address it perfectly. So that's why. So my apologies if this is very long and very lengthy, but this is how it's going to go. I'm expecting maybe hopefully a half an hour long video. Not sure. We're just going to go for it. We have to go through the 9 steps in putting this together. All I can say is this kit was very good, very fun to build, and I would hands down buy it again. I look at all the different other types of printers out there, and I would still, to this day, still pick this one. Obviously, I would like a bigger one, but for the price, for the bang for the buck, you can't beat this printer right now. This is the original i3, so for my understanding, this guy actually invented it. His name is Joe something, and he actually invented it. And the kit goes together so easy, and everything. He likes to put everything very simple, and he doesn't like anything complex, so he tries to engineer stuff that's very simple and easy going and not a lot of wires. As you can see, this printer is very clean and minimal wires. Everything's kind of tucked in, and everything works really well. I can't say enough about how cool this is. Now, I know I don't have, this is my first and only printer right now. I can't compare it to any others, but I guess if you compare YouTube videos and how things look, I say hands down, this is a good kit. Now, it's a little bit more expensive than all the other kits that you have to put together, but not by much. And I think the time when you put it together and just the quality of this kit, you're gonna just love it. So I guess we're just gonna get started in the video in the 9 different steps on how to build this kit. So here we go. So number 1, basically very self-explanatory. You have all your nuts up here. I don't know if you guys like the pointer, if you can see the screwdriver, or my little cursor right here. I'm not sure what you like, my little mouse. I'll probably be using both. So we have the bolts up here, nuts, and it came actually with all the tools. And I was thinking, oh, that's a waste of money. Why did I technically have to, quote, it's free, but, quote, had to pay for it? And it's actually nice just having them, so I didn't have to go downstairs and drag up my tools. All the pieces were right there, so that was very, very nice to have that. And everything is systematically put into the bins and plastic bags. It worked really, really good. Now that was too much. That was basically it on that one. It wasn't very, very much to do on this one. Whoops. Okay, so then I'm gonna flip over here, shut that one off, and we're gonna go on to number 2. Now this is obviously where it starts getting into it. Now when you're on this site, if you want anything blown up, you can just click on it, and it typically blows up. Obviously it's not doing it right now, but whatever. There we go. So if you click on it, it blows up. Now you see we're going to be using the middle rods right there, and everything's color coded. So when you go back, you can see green and green. You can see the smooth rods. So just make sure when you divide them up, so you have longs, middles, and shorts when you're dividing your rods up. And then you have the long, so you have the pink goes with the pink up here, and your pink border. So that's kind of what that looks like right there. I'm not sure why it's not doing it this way, but anyways, we'll just keep moving on. So those are some of the tools that you need. Now, just have to say, when you're putting this together, these pieces are all 3D printed from the printer, not your printer, but exactly the same one. And I was just astonished on how well they're printed and how well they're made. Some of the fine detail this thing can print with, very, very good. This is printed with ABS plastic. I think it's 20% infill when they're doing that. And what I did is right away when I built my printer, after a few prints after it was working, then I went and I reprinted all the ABS plastic parts just in case something breaks. And I'm not anticipating anything breaking right now, just because the plastic pieces really don't move or have a lot of force to them. So I'm not anticipating anything really wrong with it. So we'll just keep going. Now, obviously you want 90 millimeters or 80 millimeters right in here. And basically you put the screws in and it's pretty simple. So that's exactly what I did. And then you just put the screws on here, and really no thinking at all. And then on the bottom right here, you just want to kind of line it up in the middle. You don't have to necessarily get it perfect right at this time, but eventually you will. Now it says right down here that it's really incredible, very important to get it square. So I took a ruler and a square, and I got it all square, and I got it all nice and tight, and I really worked on it for a long time, this area. And one thing that you should do is always put it on something super flat. Now sometimes tables and sometimes dressers or the carpeting, it's not flat. So make sure you get like some plywood or something that's really flat, and measure it with like a piece of glass, or measure it with a straight edge to see if it's really flat. And if it's not, then go to something else and use that. So I worked on that really long time to get it right. Then I went down to the next step, and I was trying to fit it inside here, and they weren't fitting inside. I had to actually move the screws and nuts out just a little bit. So my advice is always read down just a little bit to see what your next step is, and which I should have done and I didn't. And then get everything square when it's inside this aluminum frame. Okay, so kind of get it set up and inside there and get everything square, while you want the frame to slide nice and easy through. Let's see if I can find a good, yeah, so you want the frame and the steel threaded rod to slide nice and easy into this gap. And it is now, but I had to move it around. It wasn't my first time. I had to do a couple tries, but if I would have known that, I probably could have got it pretty close to the first or second try. So just for your information on that, and then you should do just fine. And always remember never to tighten up the nuts too tight. You can break them. So it is plastic, and it's somewhat, it's 20% infill, so it's not 100% plastic inside there. So just be careful when you're tightening up everything in here that you don't crank on it too tight and bend it and break it. And then this one was this is another thing too. I would have done a couple things differently when I was building it. So I got everything totally straight right here, and I thought, okay, perfect, I'm doing just great. Then I get down to here, and they say add the rods. So you go up to the rods, and you find your rods, which I showed you that were right there, basically the green rods, number 2 rods. And they said that there shouldn't be any gaps from the metal to the plastic right there. So I had a little bit of gaps between the metal and the plastic. So what I had to do is I had to re-straighten it all out again. So that's just another thing that you have to be kind of careful. You want it perfectly straight from that metal piece to the plastic, so that it doesn't slop around in the plastic. It's just gonna make your prints look a lot better, and it's just gonna be more efficient. I'm sure it would probably work if it was a little sloppy, but you want to make sure it's nice and straight, and there's no slop in there at all when you're doing that. Let's see, yeah. So yeah, I guess that would be the only thing that I can see on there that benefited me if I would have known this ahead of time. Excuse me. So now we're going to do our bed plate, and One thing too is I think there's two in a bag, two bearings in a bag. I would use some oil. Some people say use grease and put some grease inside there before. The directions never said that, so I never did, and I don't think I would. I might have put a little, I should have maybe put a little bit more oil inside the bearings. The bearings are a little dirty, they're a little black when you're moving them around, but once you use them for a while and you put your good oil in there, eventually that dirty black oil comes out and they work fine for what they are. That's basically what you do. And then when you put the bearings in here, tighten them down, put the zip tie on, and then I take my pliers and I give it a kind of a twist and twist them up so it really cranks it down nice and tight. That's just my preference on that as well. Yes, right there. So I take my pliers and I give it a good twist right there. Then that should be good for that part. Then obviously cut them. And when you're doing this area right here, make sure when you're screwing them down that it's not too tight on the plastic, because you can break it. I didn't break anything, but it does happen. I've seen YouTube videos that people do break them. And just by reading this really quickly, that's basically all you need to do. Now, when you're putting this on, the rods into place, make sure that they are nice and they can slide really nice and easy. So what I would do is I would give it a 180-degree twist so the rods are going straight up and down, and just kind of see if the bearings slide in that shaft. Oil them up and kind of move them back and forth until they slide nicely. They will, and then you're good to go on that. And I think that was about it on this part. I haven't built this for now probably a couple months now, so it's kind of hard for me to remember everything that I did. Same thing, zip tie these. It just goes through, self-explanatory. Make sure everything's nice and straight, zip tie and cut them off. And yeah, when you're doing this, you don't need, still at this point, you don't need to have it perfectly straight right now. That's going to come later. I would put a little bit of oil inside that little bearing right here, that little pulley, a little bit of oil, and it doesn't say you have to, but I would, just for a little bit of lube. And don't crimp it very tight. Just get it so it's the threads are on, basically right there. Make sure the threads are on the nut or on the screw, and then you should be go. You don't need to crimp it at all. You don't need to tighten it very tight. So that's that. And yeah, basically put the motor on and tighten it down, and you should be good there. Now this is kind of where you want to get it more. You can tell if you get it straight or not. It's gonna, if the plastic piece, I'm gonna zoom in. If the plastic piece is not vertical, you're gonna see it up here. So you want to make sure that, so basically if it's not vertical and it's tilted down, you're going to bring this piece over to the right just a little bit to bring it up. And still at this point, it doesn't need to be perfect, but just kind of eyeball it and make sure it works. We're going to come back to those in a little bit as well. And then these are your end stops, and you just put those right there. Pretty self-explanatory. You don't need to know exactly where they go right now. Later on, you're gonna see where you can adjust them later. So just kind of put it down, snug it up tight, and then you should be good to go. You can still move it. And this is where you can do your end stops. So right here, when you move it back one position, it comes back, it's going to hit the switch, and it should line up right about there. That should be able where it stops, or bring it back just a little closer. And let's see, right there. I'll just zoom in. So yeah, so it should be a little closer than that. So once you put this on the end stop, and then it should shut off right about there, and then you'll be good to go on that. And just do the wiring right there. I'm gonna look on here. Yeah, and that's kind of what it should look like right about there, is just Nice clean wires. Everything's kind of tucked in. Keep zip ties on, and that's basically what mine looked like when I was done on that. Okay, so now this is kind of it's a little bit more tricky and complicated, and I was a little, believe it or not, I was a little nervous on when I was doing this and how it was going to work out. So this is the pulley for the bed. So basically I just pushed it in, and I used the credit card and I pushed it all the way in so it was nice and tight. These things are made so well that you can see each little groove on the belt, it slid right into place. That's how accurate the printer is. It knew where each groove was and it slid right into place right there. So that was the easy part. So once you do that, and it should kind of look like that, kind of bring it all the way back to the edge. And obviously you want to make sure and check and see if there's any plastic areas around that it would get jammed or it wouldn't fit in, so you would have to maybe cut it out with a knife. But typically they look over them somewhat and they're okay on that. And then you want to just tighten up these, so you kind of bring it right to this area and align this up with this. I'm sorry, I don't know the terms exactly. And still kind of eyeball it and just kind of make sure it looks right. Then you're going to put your pulley on here. And what you want to do on that is, once my pulley came loose in a print, and it screwed up my print, so I had to retighten it. So I would maybe use Loctite, lock threader on it, and that might help. I just kind of check. I haven't used it yet, but I would just make sure it's tight every so often, and then I'm good to go. And on that, but yeah, mine did loosen up on there once on my print. Now I check it a lot, so it doesn't happen anymore. Okay, so now we're on to this point right now. This is kind of a crucial step. This is the spot where you want to make sure your belt is tight. So if you come over here, you can look, this is going to be straight across, and it's in this orientation, so this point is going up basically. And then you want to make sure when your belt is tight that it has a pinging sound. And it's kind of hard to make it really tight. It's easy to make it sloppy, but it's hard to make it tight. One thing you can do, if you do make it sloppy, you can come over here and push this down or up, and that will tighten it up, but that's not very good. You want to make sure it's straight across right from the beginning, because once you start using it, it's going to stretch out a little bit. So I did exactly what they did, is I took it and I stretched it as tight as I could. And then which helped a lot, I gave it another twist with my hand, held it in there, gave it a twist, and I tightened it up even more. Then I pushed it in there, and used my credit card, and I pushed it in there, and it worked just fine as like that. It worked very good. I was very impressed with it actually, and how well and easy and how tight it was. It wasn't loose at all. And don't feel bad about it's too tight. Your bearings and your motor will work just fine with it. Mine works really well, and they like it tight that way, and it's not going to wear it out, and it's going to help your prints work out really well on there. So that's basically what I did, and I didn't cut this off because I wanted it for other, if it broke or something, I would just have a little extra for something, or if I have ever needed to use retighten it, I would just have more a belt longer so I can kind of work with it. And I just kind of tucked it inside. I never cut it. I just kind of tucked it inside. They don't show that, but yeah, I just kind of tucked it inside somehow and kind of winded. Oh yeah, here's one. Kind of winded it around inside there without cutting it, just because I just didn't want to do it. So it's still the full length there. You can cut it. Most people would probably cut it, but I just chose not to do that. And this one, you just want to make sure it's tight. I'm going to take a break and just get some water really quick. Okay, so now basically want to make sure that's tight, and still apologize for how boring this video is. And you just want to make sure that the pads are on, and then you are completed. I'm just going to make so you completed with y-axis. Now we're going to go to the x-axis. So that's basically obviously left and right. And these are some of the tools you're going to need. And these are the pieces that are in the kit. You just want to make sure everything's nice and clean before you put them in. You might have to put a nut inside there. I think I did a nut right there and a nut right there. Not an acorn nut, a metal nut. Okay, so now we're going to be using these rods indicated as orange. So you're going to use the long rods. And when you put these in, yes, like I said again, oil them up a little bit before you put them in. And it's gonna be kind of hard. So put the bearing on the desk or on your table, and then kind of press on them, and they'll pop right in. They're gonna actually snap just a little bit. There's some little plastic pieces that are left over from the print. They're gonna kind of break away, so don't worry about it when they do snap. But that's kind of how that is. And yeah, you just pop them in and away you go. Now you want to make sure that the orientation is right. So you make sure that you have this one obviously going this way. This one is actually going vertically like this, and the two on the bottom bearings and one on top. On that, you should be good. Now this was pretty cool. It was this piece is all obviously printed, and it's amazing. You'll see that there's a hole that goes from here, goes underneath the plastic, and comes up here where the zip tie is. And it was, I couldn't believe it. It was so easy to put the zip ties in. Yeah, I couldn't believe it. And it was just neat to see how precise this thing was, and there was no bad plastic or anything. So it was really cool on that as well. So yeah, obviously put the zip ties in, and you just want to make sure that they're zip tied in just like that, I guess. And there's really nothing more I can say about that. I don't think there was any questions I had with it. It was very self-explanatory on that. You might need to orientate. That might be what I have done. You might need to orientate these up. I'm not sure on those. Yeah, you might have to orientate the zip ties up, but yeah, but other than that, make sure that you put the bearings in, the pulleys, tighten. You want to tighten this up, but just make sure that you don't over tighten it. It doesn't need to be very tight, because it does have a lock nut on it right now, nylon lock nut, so don't over tighten it. That could actually break on that one. Do your motor on there, tighten them up. You can be using the orange one or the X motor. And yeah, so this is what it should do. And it comes with one pulley here. And yeah, that's pretty easy. Here's your end stop. And you're going to put it obviously right here. And right now you don't need to know exactly right where it goes. You're going to find out that later. And it should really look just about right there. So when this is lining up, basically touching, the end stop is touching right there on that piece right there. And yeah, it says about 15 millimeters, a gap between these two, that two areas. So that kind of says it right there. Now, there might be another spot too. No, that's about it. When you're putting this in, when you're putting the end stop in, make sure it's tight, because when your pulley goes in, you don't want this black wire that goes in between here and here. You don't want the pulley to be rubbing on the wire, so make sure it's tight, and you can kind of tighten it down and then tighten it down here, and just make sure it's sitting flat against the plastic. And every so often, look at it to make sure that it's not, is not touching the pulley when it's going in. Other than that, that's it on this section. I'm going to go up to the top to make sure I'm on the right section. So that was 3. So now we go to 4. Okay, so this one was just a little bit confusing, not too bad. I mean, I knew what to do on this. Now, these are the things that you get. This is for the top, this is for the bottom. Now, when you look at this one, they're actually different. They have two different pictures in there. So, I mean, it should work just fine, but they're two different pictures, so it doesn't look exactly the same as this one right here. But it does work. I asked them about it, and they just the updated picture or wrong picture. That's all. Just make sure you don't over tighten like stated. And it only comes with three screws, not 4 screws. Because right here you can see there's 4 screws that you could get screwed into. I went and purchased some more screws, 1 screw per motor, and it didn't seem to help any. But 3 screws will be just fine when you put that in. When you also put the motor in, let's see, it's gonna be facing the motor wires are gonna be facing the metal, and you just kind of have to push them in. Don't worry about cutting the wires. It should fit in nice and tight. It's going to be a very snug fit, and the wires are going to be facing the back of the frame. So you're going to have to kind of push them in, use some elbow grease, and tighten them down that way, and they won't move at all. Then when you get to this point, you're going to make sure that your wires are nice and tight, and it should kind of just look just like this. And nice and tight, and let's see, yeah, should look nice and tight just like that. And I didn't realize that it looks from here to here, it looks like the whole thing is straight, but actually this part is moved up a little bit, so you're not really sitting on the wires, or nothing's really happening from this point. Everything's basically sitting on those 2 points right there, and everything else is elevated. So if your wire does get low a little bit, it's not the worst thing in the world, but just try to keep it on this side of the plate. You'll be just fine with that. That's another spot where you would work. Yeah, and then what you want to do is tighten everything down and make sure everything's straight, and then you're well on your way. Now this one, we're going to use the bottom ones for the Z rods. This is the last rods of the kit you're going to use. Same thing, you're just going to put these on a table and take the rod, push them down. They're going to snap, they're going to go into place, and you can move them a little bit. Here's your end stop for your Z. Z is up and down, V is vertical. And yeah, you're going to screw those right into place with your provided screws. And it gets a little bit more complicated right this section, because there's a lot of stuff that needs to be fitted in right. So this is a little bit more complicated. If you have another hands, that would be great. If you don't have extra hands, well, then you can still do it yourself. It's not that hard to do. And basically, yeah, you put them in. And what I did, let's see if there's yeah, right here. So what I did is I got the plastic tubing up to here. That was the easy part. Now trying to get it on that shaft was hard, and I tried to use my hands and it didn't work very well. But eventually I took a pliers and I pushed it down with my pliers, kind of pushed it down, grabbed it and pulled, grabbed and pulled, and kind of did it real slowly, and it worked. Now you don't want a gap. You don't want any gap between the threaded rod and the motor shaft. You want that completely, nothing is touching there. So, and then it comes with the little, let's see, heat shrink stuff. That's kind of silly, but I don't know why they actually need it on there. It doesn't really do anything besides looks, and it kind of, I don't know. I would maybe prefer not having it on there, but it's on there, so I put it on there. And if you forget to put it on there, I wouldn't go back and change it. Just leave it without. You don't really typically need it on there. Same thing. This is on your the top of the printer. Screw it down and then tighten it up with the pliers. You should be good to go there. Same thing. We're doing the same procedure. Push the belt in and then use your credit card to push it in tighter to get it nice and tight. I guess a screwdriver could work, but my credit card worked better for some reason. Yeah, this is where I was telling you too about the about the end stop. So make sure that the pulley doesn't hit that end stop wire that came through here. Make sure that's nice and tight. And yep, then pull it all the way tight, give it a nice twist, and then push it in with your credit card too as well. So that works out really well. So yeah, and I was telling you about how these are orientated. You'll see why if you don't do it that way, you won't be able to get everything on. The zip ties are orientated that way. That's designed that way. Well, you're done with this segment, so you can see all the wires. So we'll go back up to the top and make sure we're doing everything right. So we're on 4, so we're going to go to 5. Here's the extruder, and same tools. Now, mine is actually orange, this part, so stuff has changed, not too much. Mine was a little warped a little bit, so if yours is warped just a little bit, if it doesn't fit perfectly, that's fine. Everything's going to get pushed together when it's clamped down, and you won't have any problems with that. Now it's really interesting that when you're putting this together, that this heats up to 250 degrees Celsius, which is like 400 and something degrees Fahrenheit, so it heats up really super hot, let alone, and it's in plastic. I don't really get that, but there's a lot of airflow going over it and cooling it down, so the outside isn't really getting that hot. It's just basically the inside is that hot. Everything else is getting cool, but it doesn't seem right that a plastic piece could hold this metal piece that gets so hot. I don't understand that, but it works. I guess I don't need to know how it works as long as it works, right? So yeah, you basically self-explanatory. Do that, and you put it in. I don't remember anything super difficult about this part. Same thing, put your pulley on, or your gear, or whatever it's called. Yes, and let's see there, same thing, kind of put it on, not too difficult. Can't think of anything that I did wrong there. This one you just don't want to be too tight, because this is going to actually slide, move back and forth. You'll see why later. Now this, you want to make sure that your pulley is going straight up where the wire is actually going to be coming through here. So you want your pulley can move back and forth on that shaft. So you want your pulley to go straight up right through that tube. And once that's aligned right, just tighten it down. And I think that was about it for that. Don't remember anything too bad. There's your screws. Put your fan on. Yeah, then this just kind of snaps right into place. So you won't have, to do too, you just snap that into place. Those might have to be cleaned out just a little bit when you put your nuts in there. But other than that, it should just look just like that when it's done. And you just want these finger tight. You don't need to tighten them down too much. These just kind of tighten them, just screw them in till they're not necessarily even snug, but just until they're into the screws just a little bit. You'll be good to go. I don't have to really adjust mine very often at all. And that's about all there that I can remember. Make sure this is tight. I believe if you buy it now, they all come tightened, so you don't have to check them. But they say check them, but I don't think you have to check them anymore because they all come pre-tightened. Yeah, basically you add this. That looks basically really simple, and tighten it down. Not too much. Now, believe it or not, this was actually a little bit confusing for me. I was a little confused on what this was supposed to do. So you're going to take your, let's see, I don't think there's a spot right. Oh, no. Yeah, so it looks a little different too since it's not orange and it's black. But what you're going to do here is they're going to give you a 3mm because we print with 1.75 millimeter, but they're going to actually give you a 3 millimeter, and it doesn't go all the way in. I thought it went further in, but it just goes just a little bit in right here, and you're just going to stick that plastic in there, and then you're going to take the wrap and wrap all your wires around it. So it's only going to go in, it's just going to only go in just a little bit, and it's going to stop. There's a little hole here, and it's just going to stop right there. And yeah, then you take all these wires and you start wrapping it around just like this. Yeah, just like that. You're just going to wrap it around all the wires, and then you'll see where it goes later on that later. So that was a little concern that I had, or didn't know exactly how that fitted. Probably for everybody else it was super easy, but for me it was like, what did I do there? But I figured that out, and then we're done with this section. So we'll move up to the top. Now we're going to go on to number 6, LCD. This was kind of fun because now you're getting closer to the end of the project. And you just want to make sure that you put these on straight. You don't need to push them on too hard. They do take a little bit of elbow grease to do it, but don't do it so tight that you're going to break something. Just be careful. If you're careful with it, it will go on. Don't break them trying to put them on, or take them off if you got them on backwards or something too. Same thing here. Just be careful with it. It's just going to take a little finesse to work on it. Mine didn't go in there super easy, but I got it. Now this, you can tell right here, this is one. You can tell by just one line, and there's 2 lines, so obviously 2 goes with 2 and 1 goes with 1. I mean, anybody can do that, right? So that's about there. Then you put your knob on, and then you just zip tie it right here. You zip tie it. Zip tie and zip tie there, so inside outside type of thing. Now this is where you want to kind of be careful too. You want to make sure that when you zip tie it, that you don't zip tie it too tight. You just kind of loosely zip tie them on here, because these are metal screw rods, and if you zip tie them too tight, they can rub and they can just cut through the wires on here. So just want to make sure they're loosely wired in, and you're all done with that section right there. So we'll go to 7. Same thing, real easy. You're going to plug your power supply in. Make sure that's on 120 volts if you're in America. Screw them in. Now here you want to make sure, this is kind of a crucial step, you want to make sure that these gray wires are not intersecting with the black wires. So you don't want to have the gray wires laying on top of the black wires, or vice versa. You always kind of want to keep them separate, because I guess it can mess up with the LCD screen and have it kind of wreak havoc on it. So basically that's what you do there. Oh, and if I didn't tell you, when you're setting up this pulley, make sure that your pulley is nice and straight, and that you can look, if you look straight down the pulley, that it looks very straight. So I'm not going to go back and show you on that one, but just make sure on that. Let's see. Yeah, so you zip tie them there, zip tie here. Yeah, and you can kind of see right there where they're kind of touching, but they're not crossing over each other. You just don't want them to cross over each other. Then you should be good. And obviously, don't tighten it too tight on the threaded metal rods. You can read that for yourself, and you just screw the bolts in and make sure that you have the proper bolts. You see these are rounded right there, and those go touching the plate just because, so it doesn't dig into the heated bed itself. And lock, and use your lock washers or lock nuts on that. And that's relatively simple to do there. This prevents it from the soldering your heated bed solder to flex and break. So that just keeps it from wiggling and breaking the solder joint. So that's the only reason why you really put it there, and kind of have to wiggle it around right just to get it to the right spot and make it work right. These kind of snap. You have to use your elbow grease on here to make sure they run flat, and you know, eventually they'll start breaking in, and you can start using them. Once I leave them on, I put them on and I leave them on basically. Now, depending on different filament sizes and different filament manufacturers, you might have to adjust them a little bit. But you know, it's 2.5 pounds up there, and when it starts printing, it kind of wobbles back and forth. So it does use a little bit of strength, and you need a little bit of strength for that. So we are done with this section. Okay, now we're going to go to number 8, electronics, the fun part. I thought this was going to be kind of easy to do, but it was a little bit of thinking. It was a little bit of messing around. When you're doing this, obviously you put your bolts in, tighten it down, and they tell you, you know, they make it look easy what to do. You put them in, but it's kind of more confusing. Now you kind of want to make sure all your wires are kind of coming in, getting nice and tight in there, and you kind of want to work on cable management at this point. And not sure why they're showing this again, but let's see. They're showing 2 different cables. Yeah, oh, maybe put the, yeah, cables orientated. Now, the only thing that I wish that they would have done on this section was they have the board going this way, but when you have it set up and you're looking at it, it's actually should be facing this way. So it would have been nicer if they would have flipped it around. So I took a picture of it, or I downloaded this picture, and then I rotated it on my computer to look at it better. So it's basically, you think everything is fine, and it's actually rotated upside down. Now you can see, and let's see. So I'm going to go back one spot. You can see this spot right here. It's not the same pin as these. This one up here is not the same pin as this one, but if you have problems with that, don't be worried. Just stick the appropriate one in. So if it's the end stop, just put that one in, the end stop in wherever it's supposed to go. And even if they don't line up perfectly, or they have the right connector on it, they will slide in. And don't be worried if it's the wrong connector. It's not a problem. It will work, and it actually says that down here too as well. So that's that. And so this is okay, so remember when we were winding all of our wires up right where that the extruder head was, and we had that 3mm plastic. Now this is it right here. So I think this is the 3mm plastic, or one of them is. And what you're gonna do is kind of zip tie it right there. Oh yeah, right there. You're gonna zip tie it right there. Now, excuse me if I said this already, but some of them you have to tighten down and make sure you get them extremely tight. If you don't, I guess they can burn the board out, and they can, yeah, melt your board. So make sure that they get tight. This is for the heated bed. So just make sure you have them super tight, and you'll be good to go. That's another spot. And you kind of have to work on it. I don't necessarily zip tie mine perfectly down super tight until I know where all my wires are. Then I kind of crank everything down. But actually the wire management to get it straight was kind of difficult. I mean, you had a lot to work from. Now, I think there's one section in here that you don't reverse anything. Don't put them in the wrong spot. You can really mess up. You can blow your board up if you don't. And one thing else I like about this kit too is that they have fuses in here. A lot of the kits right now, they don't have fuses. Some of the cheaper boards, they don't have fuses. I like that about this board, that they have fuses in case something happens. You're not going to burn up your board. The fuses hopefully should burn up first before your fuses do. Basically self-explanatory. It was a little difficult putting everything together and knowing where everything goes. You can also tell there are labels on everything, basically where they go. So kind of, if you don't know, it says, like this one, I don't know if you can see, but it says fan 2, and you know, different, or extruder, heated bed. So it does say things on there, so read that. And this is where your ribbon was, ribbon 2. So you put it there. Now try to get all your wires kind of nicely. It's kind of hard to do it, but kind of nicely. And just make sure that they're not intersecting with that black wire down there that I was telling you that from the power supply. And you're going to have to use a little bit of finesse to work the wires in. And it's not going to, eventually the wires are going to go in nice, but try to get them so they're not, the airflow isn't blocking. Too much airflow. Try to put them on one side or the other. Do your best on that. You'll be fine there. Oh yes, right there. That's what I was saying about your wires not having them crisscrossing. You see these, this is your power supply wire. They kind of go up and around on that as well. Let's see. And then we are done with this section. Okay. So the last section, yeah, just make sure they're tight, and you are done. Yeah, so this is the guy. He works out really good. They're great support, great company to work for. And if you don't want to, I did everything on the computer. I looked on it, but he also provides a nice book that helps you with it. And either way works out really, really well. So excuse the long, boring video, but if this helps anybody, I'm glad I put it on. And my voice is very tiring after going for 46 minutes right now, almost 47 minutes. So other than that, I think if I missed something, contact me. I typically don't answer questions on the computer, so if you have any questions, somebody might answer them, but this is kind of what it is. If I do answer questions, it's going to typically be through a video itself. So hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll talk to you later. Thanks for watching. Bye.